So time for another one of these quick book review videos. I've got a few volumes here in front of me today, sort of a hodgepodge of different topics. One is Stories in Stone. This is by David Williams. He writes a lot for Earth Magazine, and this book came out a little over a year ago, I think. And it basically takes a look at a bunch of different building stones in different cities, mainly in the United States. Although he also looks, I know, at least at one Italian stone. The Carrara marble, but goes through how these rocks formed and interesting tie-ins from history. I learned a bunch of stuff from it. There was a bunch of stuff in here I already knew, but like one thing that I learned was the original logic behind the diluvial explanation of fossils actually came from none other than Martin Luther. So David explains that Martin Luther was first the guy who popularized the idea that plants and animal fossils were coming from Noah's flood. And let's see, what else have I got here? I've got Bones, Rocks, and Stars. This is by Chris Turney. This is basically a book about how we figure out how old things are. So the different chapters focus on different dating techniques. Some of them are, the sort of stuff that you would think is obvious in terms of like relative dating and isotopic dating. He also spends some time on tree rings. He has one chapter that's actually about historical documents and correlating historical documents with a focus on King Arthur. So it's an interesting book, a good sort of simple little book. It's pretty thin, as you can see, a primer on different dating techniques. Then I've got a few books here that are about specific geologic locations. One I read recently is Geology Underfoot in Death Valley and Owens Valley. And this is part of it's from the same publishers who put out the Roadside Geology series, Mountain Press in Missoula, Montana. And I read through this in preparation for a field class I was going to teach over spring break, but didn't get enough students to run. Learned a bunch of stuff, got some great ideas for field sites in here, found out about some stuff that I had no idea about, like turtlebacks in the eastern part of Death Valley. And then it made me familiar with some of the details of places I visited myself, like Mosaic Canyon. Also from that same publishing house is Northern Exposures, a geologic story of the Northwest, which basically takes a look at Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington states and their geologic history through time. This is by David Alt and Donald Hindman, I guess is how you pronounce his name. These guys also wrote the Roadside Geology of Montana, if I'm remembering that right, or at least David Alt did. And this is an interesting book because on one level it's kind of like just sort of a comprehensive history, but on another level it's actually a little bit wacky. And the authors say, that not everybody would agree with our interpretations here, but they kind of lay out their interpretations. And some of that stuff, let's see how to put this, was new to me. So it could be that this is accepted in certain circles, but and if the data's there, maybe it's accurate. But one example of this is their idea about detachment faults moving along sort of a lubricated layer of magma and having this volcanic front, basically preceding the detachment as it slides along. This is the first time I've ever heard of that. That could be well accepted. I'm really unfamiliar with those detachment systems, so perhaps one of my colleagues who reads the blog would comment as to how realistic that is. But in general, I found it an entertaining read and, again, enlightening on some issues that I hadn't thought about before. Final one that I'll mention today is this one. This is a superb book. Dykstra Houston from Bates College wrote a book about the Presidential Range in New Hampshire. This is an exquisite book. One of the things I really love about it is it's got this great geologic map that's included in it. Check this thing out. Isn't that beautiful? Really gorgeous geologic map of the Presidential Range, which includes Mount Washington and mountains named after other presidents. This is part of the White Mountains. And a really neat geologic story there, including turbidites and then metamorphosis, intrusion by granites, folding, faulting, the usual stuff. But really well done. Again, a pretty slim volume, so you don't really need to feel overwhelmed by your reading, but it would really enrich the experience of any geologist who's traveling to the White Mountains. So that's it for today. Thanks for joining us.